If you've been scrolling through endless greenhouse options, measuring your backyard, and still feel like you might end up with a structure that looks great on paper, but ends up being a waste of space or money, you're not alone. That indecision usually comes from trying to balance size, durability, price, and the actual day-to-day experience of opening doors, adjusting vents, and moving pots in and out. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. In this review, I'm going to walk through exactly how the Palram Canopia Bella 8 feet 16 inches greenhouse performs in a real garden, what kinds of growers will get the most out of it, and where the value really lies beyond the headline specs. First, let's talk about the problem most hobby gardeners face. You want a protected space that lets you extend the growing season, but you don't want to spend a fortune on a custom-built glass house that requires a permanent foundation. You also don't want a flimsy plastic tunnel that collapses at the first gust of wind. The Canopia Bella tries to hit that middle ground with a fairly large footprint, 128 square feet of growing area, and a 7-foot peak that gives taller plants, like tomatoes and dwarf fruit trees, enough headroom to thrive. The key selling points are the twin-wall polycarbonate panels and the rust-resistant aluminum frame, both of which are meant to keep the structure standing through spring showers and summer heat alike. What I found most useful about the twin-wall polycarbonate is the way it handles temperature swings. The 6mm panels create a double wall effect that traps heat during the day while still allowing a decent amount of light through. According to Palram, the panels block up to 99.9% of UV, which means your seedlings won't get scorched on a hot afternoon, and you'll see less fading of the material over the years. In practice, I noticed that on a sunny June morning, the interior temperature rose about 10 degrees above ambient, enough to keep lettuce and herbs growing without supplemental heat, but not so hot that the leaves wilted. That balance is something many growers look for because it reduces the need for extra fans or heaters. Wind resistance is another frequent worry, especially if your garden sits on a hill or near a tree line. The Canopia Bella uses a bell-shaped aluminum frame that Palram says is designed for increased wind resistance. In my own backyard, which sees occasional gusts up to 30 miles per hour, the structure stayed perfectly still. The frame's shape distributes pressure more evenly than a flat tube, and the fact that the aluminum is rust-resistant means you won't be dealing with corrosion after a season of rain. That said, the rating of 3.4 stars out of 5 on Amazon suggests a few owners have experienced issues, most likely with the anchoring system rather than the frame itself. If you have a particularly windy site, you'll want to add extra stakes or tie-down anchors, which are sold separately. Ease of access is something I rarely see highlighted in product copy, but it matters a lot when you're loading trays of seedlings or moving a rolling potting bench. The Canopia Bella comes with low-threshold double doors, which sit just a few inches above the ground. This design means you can push a cart or a wheeled seed starter right into the greenhouse without having to lift anything over a high step. The doors also lock, which is a nice security feature if you keep valuable heirloom varieties inside. In my experience, the lock feels sturdy enough to deter casual theft, yet it's not so stiff that you can't open it with one hand when you're juggling a watering can. Ventilation is another practical aspect that separates a usable greenhouse from a greenhouse that turns into a sauna. The model includes 3 adjustable roof vents that you can open partially or fully depending on the temperature and humidity inside. I found the vent handles intuitive. They rotate smoothly and stay in place once set, which is helpful on windy days when you don't want them flapping open unintentionally. The vents provide enough airflow to keep humidity around 60% during a warm summer night, which helped prevent mildew on my basil and parsley. However, keep in mind that the vents are roof-mounted, so if you have very tall plants that reach near the peak, you'll need to watch the clearance. In that scenario, you might have to open the side doors more often to get adequate air exchange. Now, who should actually buy this greenhouse? If you're a serious hobbyist with a moderate budget, say, you're willing to spend a few $100s for a permanent structure that will last several seasons, this is a solid candidate. The size is big enough for a mixed vegetable garden, a couple of small fruiting vines, and even a potting bench, but it's not so massive that you need a tractor to move it. The low threshold and double doors make it especially appealing if you have mobility concerns or if you regularly bring heavy trays in and out. It also works well for gardeners in temperate zones who want to extend their season.